Hello and welcome everyone to the In Focus series of Drishti IAS English. I am Pragya with you today, and in our today's interesting discussion, we are going to ponder upon a very important question. The title of our today's discussion is How is democracy measured by global indices? We are also going to understand what are the shortcomings of these global indices, and most importantly, why does India wants its own democracy index? So in this discussion, we are firstly going to understand the definition of democracy. Then we are also going to understand the India scenario on these global indices. Then we are also going to examine why does India care about a democracy index. Then we are also going to study about the major global democracy indices. Then we are also going to examine what are the limitations of these global indices. And lastly, we are going to discuss a practice question for your prelims examination and a practice question for your mains examination. So if I talk about the background of our today's topic, 2024 is going to be the biggest year for democracy, because half of the world's population is going for election. And a fourth of it lives in India. So the general elections that are going to take place in India are really a litmus test for democracy in the year 2024. And if you talk about the India's rank on Liberal Democracy Index, Index 2024. So it has a very poor ranking. It stands at 104, and it is being compared to the countries such as Niger, countries such as Ivory Coast, and countries such as Palestine. So that is why you are hearing this again and again, that democracy is threatened in India. But how far is this true? We are going to figure it out in our today's discussion. So moving to the important point of our today's discussion, that what do we understand by democracy? Okay. In simple terms, if you talk about democracy, it is the government by people. So in democracy, people have a right to choose their own representatives, and that is why it is known as democracy. So democracy is a political system in which citizens get to participate in free and fair elections. And democracies are also liberal societies which invest in the civic rights of citizens and offer them various kinds of protections, various kinds of fundamental rights. So very simply understood, it is a government, as it is said for India, that it is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Moving forward. So how exactly do these global indices measure the democracy? So some indices use only 2 indicators, while others have more than 400. The weightage assigned and aggregation model followed also fluctuates across various global indices. So they do not have a uniform standard of measuring democracy. It depends on the indices to indices. Okay, some have a complete reliance on facts, some completely rely on judgments, and some completely rely on mixture of both facts and judgments. So yes, it differs from indices to indices. Okay, if you talk about the VDEMS researchers code, a series of indicators for 12 areas across media, civil society, political parties, judiciary, and civil liberties. Each area is assigned 5 experts. And if you talk about the economic intelligence unit, okay, it relies on a regular citizen surveys to rank 60 indicators. So this essentially states that yes, the measure of democracy by these global indices is not uniform in nature. Moving forward, some indices also measure democracy on a very broad spectrum. So, the economic intelligence unit rank goes from 0 to 10. VDEMS goes from 0 to 1. Some categorize democracy from autocracy to anocracy, and some categorize it as not free to electoral autocracy. For example, the Freedom House Index categorizes a democracy from not free to electoral autocracy. Okay. Others also classify the degree of democracy in a particular country. So this is how the researchers are able to measure democracy on these global indices. Moving forward, there are 4 broad types of data that these indices use. Firstly, observational data, data on observable facts such as voter turnout rates. Then in-house coding, where researchers assess country-specific information using academic material, newspapers, etc. Then there is expert surveys, where selected experts from a country provide a subjective evaluation. So they are not providing an objective evaluation, they rely on their own subjective evaluation. And then representative surveys, where a selected group of citizens offer their own judgment. So these are the 4 kind of broad categories on which this democracy is measured on these global indices. Moving forward, let us understand what is currently the India scenario on these global indices and why is India rejecting the assessment of these global indices. So the recent democracy index from the VDEM Institute label India as one of the worst autocratizers. So basically this has reduced the India's rank from a not free democracy to an electoral autocracy. And as I have mentioned that this year in 2024, India's rank has slipped further to 104 on the Liberal Democracy Index. Other similar indices have also observed a decline in India's democratic standing in recent times, categorizing it as only partially free according to Freedom House, being labeled as a flawed democracy by the Economist Intelligence Unit and better classified as an electoral autocracy. So yes, they are trying to build a negative scenario around India's democracy throughout the globe by stating that it is not free, it is only partially free, it is a flawed democracy, democracy is threatened in India. But how far is this true? We'll be figuring it out. Moving forward, let us examine why does India cares about a democracy index. So the consensus among institutions ranging from the varieties of democracy or the VDEM project to Freedom House is that India's democracy is under significant threat, and it remembers the conditions in the 1975 when then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi declared a state of emergency. So definitely these are the negative commentaries, and some of this is actually not true. If you consider the statements made by our Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, so basically he says that these indices, they invent their own rule, they invent their own rules, they have a flawed sample size, they have an inaccurate measure of democracy, accurate measure of democracy, and they also do not have any common standard. They rely basically on the expert panel's subjective judgment. They do not follow any kind of objective criteria, and that is why India has rejected all of the negative commentaries by these global agencies and think tanks. What are they trying to do? They are trying to sabotage India's sovereign rating, and definitely if India's sovereign rating will be decreased, it will definitely have an impact on the World Bank Governance Index, and India does not want to continue with this negative commentary that is being portrayed for Indian democracy on a global scale. Moving forward, India has previously denounced all global rating assessments of Indian conditions, from democracy and press freedom to hunger, human development and happiness. So if you'll study about India's rank on all of these global assessments, you will see that India continuously possesses a low rank. Last year, the central government revealed intentions to develop fresh metrics for gauging social economic advancement, dismissing international standards that it is deemed to be misleading against India. It is deemed to tarnish the image of Indian democracy at a global scenario, and that is why India has engaged the Observer Research Foundation to develop its own independent democracy index. And that is why India is pushing its own independent democracy index, which will be peer reviewed, which will be based on objective judgments rather than the subjective judgments. And this global indices, these global indices assessment status has not only been denied by India, it is also being denied by the independent economists. Moving forward, let us understand what are these major global democracy indices. So first is VDEM. VDEM is in Sweden, and it has been releasing its report since the year 1798. Then Economist Intelligence Unit, it is in UK, okay, and it has been releasing its report from 2006. And then there is Freedom House from USA. It is releasing its report from 1976. Other major global indices includes the Lexical Index, Boex-Miller-Rosado coding, Bertelsmann Transformation Index, Worldwide Governance Indicators, and International IDEA's Global State of Democracies report. So these are some of the major global indices which measure the democracy around the globe. Moving forward. So what exactly are the limitations of these global indices? Are they completely accurate in nature? The countries in the around the globe do not believe so. So these global indices reports are not only being denied by India, as I said, they are also denied by independent people, independent economists, independent leaders. So they are also trying, saying that yes, they definitely, the Western media is trying to create a negative image about the developing countries. So the primary criticism revolves around the subjectivity inherent in these indices, which undermines their credibility and accuracy. So they rely on the subjective judgment of their panel. They do not rely on the actual facts, they do not rely on the actual objective judgment. They follow their own inherent biases that is there with their panel, and that is why the reports and assessments of these global indices are not uniform in nature. Despite utilizing scholarly expertise and sophisticated aggregation models, evaluations ultimately rely on the subjective judgment of researchers and coders rather than the objective quantifiable characteristics. And that is why the assessment of these global indices cannot be believed by a blind eye. Moving forward, if you talk about VDEM's egalitarian indicator, it evaluates the equality of social groups in the political sphere, a concept open to interpretation unlike more concrete metrics such as the number of political parties. So yes, they have a very vague criteria of measurement, and this is being pointed out time and again. Salvatore Babons, an associate professor at the University of Sydney, raised doubts about the robustness of data, evidence and neutrality of the individuals such as professors, authors and intellectuals responsible for conducting these surveys, and that is why they are often criticized by the nations around the globe. So with this, we come to a conclusion of our today's discussion. We have seen how we define democracy. We have also tried to understand how exactly researchers measure democracy on global indices. We are also have understood that why India wants to push for its own democracy index. We have also seen the limitations of these global indices, and now let us discuss a practice question for your prelims examination. So the question is, what is India's rank on Liberal Democracy Index 2024? Your option A is 102, your option B is 103, your option C is 104 and your option D is 105. So kindly drop your answers in the comment box below. Now let us discuss a practice question for your mains examination. So the question is, critically analyze the importance of democracy. So in the introduction, you will write the definition of democracy. Then you will write the characteristics of democracy, and then you will ponder upon the importance of democracy. Why in ancient societies we had autocracies, what were the shortcomings of autocracies, and why it is important for us to save the democratic culture. And you can conclude holistically that yes, democracy is still alive. It might be facing some of the problems, but we cannot undermine the importance of democracy completely. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you have any feedback regarding this session, kindly drop it in the comment box below. If you liked today's discussion and found it to be helpful, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such informative content. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.